Today, would ChillPoint be improved by adding loot boxes, microtransactions, and crypto? No! Remember the headline ends with a question mark.
Yeah, better is law.
Yeah.
It's always no.
The answer is no.
Why are we always trying to improve ChillPoint with the terrible industry standards?
No, I'm saying it wouldn't be improved by those.
Why is that always the question? Why can't we just improve ChillPoint with like ice cream?
Chat has...
Would today?
Would ChillPoint be better with ice cream?
Hard-hitting expose.
Yes.
Would ChillPoint be improved with ice cream?
Yes.
Yes.
We should find out. We should go figure this out.
I mean, it was improved with that, those, whatever, Pepsi space.
Oh yeah, Space Coke or Pepsi or whatever we are. Well, there's like Oreo Coke now, and some people I keep seeing people testing
Oreo Coke?
Yeah, you can either get the Oreos that taste like Coke, which has Pop Rocks in them, and I believe that's going to be a bad idea, or the Coke that's supposed to taste like Oreos.
Yeah, I don't really know what the...
So it's like
I haven't
chocolate?
seen it myself.
Yeah.
Huh.
But I keep seeing people talk about it on the internet in varying degrees of whether or not they like it.
The chat has trained me that whenever I see the everything is fine emote, I assume that something terrible is happening to the stream.
Yes.
So as we were
Maybe
transitioning to the going live thing, and I saw that, I was like, "Are we having problems? Are we
Maybe
just?"
I should take that out of the thing, because that's just like one of the things that gets put in after the timer runs out.
Oh, I thought Paul was about to threaten taking away the emote.
Yeah.
So chat can't have it anymore.
It's just one of the things that after the timer runs out, it's
Like
says,
soon, yeah.
soon, or like everybody ready, or the different things, and everything is fine is one of the things.
I think it.
Which makes everybody in the chat do that, which makes then us.
I've just learned to ignore chat. I don't know why
Maybe.
you keep listening to them.
It's just that it's when we're here where it's like we can't see OBS. Like there's nobody on the machine, and you're just kind of like, are we dropping frames hard? Like what is the problem? So then of course the picnic command, and I see that show up, and I'm like, oh god, and yeah.
Oh yeah, no. At that point, just watch for the mods.
Yeah.
Because if the mods start to lie to us, then we have some different problems.
Yeah.
The mods would never lie to us.
In short, Paul, don't change anything.
All right.
Yep.
Can do. Hey everybody, welcome to ChillPoint, the show where we talk about the week's video game news, as well as the episode of Checkpoint just went up. And this week, in fact, we might be talking about a little bit of last week's video game news as well, because last week we didn't have any ChillPoint because of the pre-release.
Yeah, they put it on a Friday, which is our day.
Yeah.
But I understand that day's haunted. It was like the 13th or something.
Yeah, it was
and
Friday
then
the 13th, yeah.
Saturday we were busy.
Yeah.
So we couldn't talk about video games.
Yeah.
It was a sad, sad time. So sad.
So anyway, welcome to ChillPoint. Let's first quickly go over, just the stories that we did in the episode Checkpoint, because there's some good stuff in there, and some feedback in the I saw in the comments and in the Discord and stuff, and it's always interesting to talk about that in that context. Starting with talking about Unity, finally finally completely dropping their or their runtime fee, which of course this is sort of the final nail, or whatever you want to call it, the final volley in this story about Unity basically burning up all of their developer goodwill.
Right.
That started a year ago or so.
Yep. I remember when we first talked about it.
With their new thing, and then they went through this whole process, and there was about a 3-week period where it was completely, developers were leaving in droves, and all this stuff was going on.
Yeah, because they didn't answer any of the questions, right?
And then they finally kind of went back and they reverted a lot of the changes, but they had this thing where like you could either do the runtime fee or you could do the 2.5%, not 25%, 2.5% revenue share. Missed the period there.
It's
a very important
period.
And then, but they sort of had, they were like, ooh, you know, and then so now a year later, they have finally dropped the whole thing.
It was, they told people that they were dropping the runtime fee, and then didn't somebody else point out that they upped other stuff though? Like,
so yeah, the part of this other thing was like they've also upped, in the same announcement where they talk about dropping the runtime fee, they've upped the licensing fees for enterprise and for their, was it professional and enterprise users. I've also seen
what was?
Sorry, I'm looking over Paul's shoulder and I'm seeing headlines come up, and I was going to make a tangential thing to the fact that The Verge's headline is Unity is canceling their controversial runtime fee, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. That is what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's not all what they're doing. Like, even when they come out with it, it's like, that's not all what they were doing. And I'm like, it is very lazy of a headline writer to say, well, I'll just say the one thing. Because if the news is that they have canceled this controversial runtime fee and that's it, then it makes sense that would be the only thing you'd want to report in the headline. But if the news is, hey, they've gotten rid of this bad thing and made all the other things worse, you'd want to point out both, which is why the comma exists, which is why you would be like canceling controversial runtime fee, comma, raising all other fees. You can do that in a headline.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's very funny that they're like doing that. And then I saw Unity's own headline for their own press release is a message to our community, Unity is canceling the runtime fee. And it is that same kind of thing where it's like, the press release says, put your best foot forward, give everybody the good news so everybody loves you, and do not point out the facts.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now
That's why you have to read beyond a headline.
The Verge should be doing that.
Well, yes.
To be fair, I don't know whether like how much of a and maybe somebody's done it out, like how much this, like, because this is also sort of part of this is like announcing or talking about like Unity 6.
Okay.
And so like I don't know if the fees, the increasing in subscription price when like a new version comes out or every couple of years, is that unusual a thing to do? Right. Like, inflation, blah, 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 subscription prices increase. It's an unfortunate thing. Now, as has been pointed out, an 8% increase, is a fair amount, and a 25% increase on their enterprise customers. And now you have to have $25 million to be an enterprise customer.
Sure, yeah.
So, that's already in the high end of the thing. But there's enterprise customers also have a minimum subscription requirement, which could be a little sketchy. Like if it's not only a 25, it's like 25% more, and also you have to have 100 seats or something.
Right, you're going to buy 100 seats no matter what, yeah, or however many, yeah.
So yeah, that and there was some argument I saw about that because back when they started doing all the when they were doing the runtime fee stuff, they also were like tweaking all their other, like the Unity Personal, Unity Pro, and Unity Enterprise. They were tweaking, stuff about like whether you have to have the Unity splash screen, whether you have to have, what other things. They were trying to make it more, being like, so it's not so bad, right? Mm-hmm. But one of the side effects of that may have been, or one of the ideas may have been like that sort of, because of the runtime fee, people moved into the pro version of Unity, and now they're getting an 8% increase, which is kind of crappy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so the end result being Unity's gone back on this, which is good. Again, as we talked about when the original one came out, when the original thing sort of went down, it is one of these things where you can go back on it, but that trust with your customers has been lost and is very hard to get back.
Yeah.
If you're if you're an indie developer starting a new big project, I'm not saying you shouldn't use Unity.
Yeah.
I would think hard about it though, and really evaluate what you're doing. And we actually talked a couple weeks ago about that there was actually an interesting story I saw about the impact of that whole thing on Godot, which of course is an open source engine that is sort of an alternative. And they're talking about how it was good, but there's also like a mitigating aspect of it where you don't actually necessarily want a huge influx of customers from a commercial program into your open source program, because there are things that Godot can't do that Unity does, because Unity has a huge development thing. And so a bunch of people coming into your program making demands on your maintainers and wanting to get features added and sort of getting sort of pissed off at the open source thing is also not helpful. So it's kind of an awkward situation.
I get it, right? Because it's like one of those. It's a little bit like that whole, well, why don't you host your own videos versus putting stuff on YouTube? It's like, well, why don't you just make your own engine? It's like, because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And that's a completely different set of specialized skills.
Right. And the people
and that adds a lot of time onto making games, which are already increasing in time and scope these days. So
anyway.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I have certainly seen some positive stuff from the people who are still with Unity after they walked back thing a year ago. Are happy with this. Obviously, the price increase is not great, but
I just would rather they had been a little bit more apparent about it instead of kind of
by sort of
trying to hide it in that.
Putting it in a separate.
I get it. You always want to just put out the good news and hope nobody pays attention to the rest of it. But.
And I mean, it's also even though we could say, okay, well, it's become a more predictable result, like whatever they've made changes wise, more money, whatever. It's a much more predictable result for people who want to program their video games.
Yeah.
There is now also that sense of, well, they tried it and everyone revolted and hated it, and they didn't immediately, like, the fact that they tried it just means that we were trying to widen the window. That's what we were trying to do, is to basically, if nobody was going to object or very few people were going to object to it, then great, good for us. We get to do it. But because so many people objected, we ended up having to reanalyze how do we do this so we can still crank out as much money as we possibly can from people, to the point where they will do something. Like, they will stick with us and they will pay us more money, because it is easier for them to do that than it is for them to make their own engine, move to a different engine, that kind of idea. So it's like, good, you've demonstrated that you can make this, change this deal at any time, pray it or not alter it any further. Like, that's what it kind of feels like. It's like people will now go with Unity 6 for another few more years, because they're like, well, I can still afford it at this point. And all you're doing is you're giving them more money for the sense of that they might still end up screwing you over in the future anyway. We don't know that, right?
Now, when I first read this press release, I was definitely pretty. There was some raised eyebrows here at the for the first This is the very first sentences. After deep consultation with our community customers and partners, we made the decision to cancel the runtime fee for our games customers effective immediately. Over the last, I've been able to connect with many of you over the last 3 months, and I've heard time and time again that you want strong unity and but so this idea of like, and we talked about it at the time when it's like, shouldn't you have been talking to the people before you made the change?
Yeah.
The change?
I mean,
So, but
yeah.
the mitigating factor to this is something that I saw somebody else talking about, is that I believe almost the entirety of the Unity like top level management it has swapped out since last year.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Like
Yeah,
basically
they'll do a
everybody,
lot.
like a lot of it is different now.
All right.
Whether that's because they, are in disgrace, or whether they're all just like, we got ours, bye.
Yeah. There's that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things, though. Every time we hear about change with like a lot of different services, there's always like that thing where sometimes when they make the change, they're like, oh, we've talked to our community and extensively, and people totally wanted this, and you get a bunch of people who come out who are like, who did you talk to?
Yeah.
Right? And then in this circumstance where you see we've talked to a bunch of you and we've all realized how much you hated things, it's hard to not read that as a bunch of people wouldn't stop screaming at us, so we changed it. This is the politest way we can say that we did this.
After deep involuntary consultation with our community.
There's also the sense that any community is going to get and you say, the Unity community, and I'm kind of like,
oh, it rhymes. It's weird.
Yes, but also
the community.
Is there a Unity community is my first question.
Well,
is there really a community of people who do this, or is there really just a bunch of people who program with this shit? It's like, are there people out there who are like, I'm a diehard Unity fan, and there's 100,000 of us, and we go to UnityCon every year, and we all dress up like our favorite Unity characters, and it's like, okay.
I think there's probably a developer community of people who use Unity and
Sure.
help each
Yeah,
other
they probably
out
don't
and all that kind of
cosplay,
stuff.
But secondarily, even for people who
There have been Unity conventions.
I get emails from Shopify all the fucking time that are like, hey, do you think you want to take this survey and tell us important things about what we can do with our business?
You're an important member of the Shopify community.
Apparently, right? And it's like, you need to tell us some stuff about about our business and answer some questions. And so when I see that, I'm like, I don't have time to engage with your BS survey about some random thing that's going to happen, and then 6 months later, we've heard your feedback, and here's all the new features in Shopify, and I'm like, I don't care. That's what gets me. Is I'm like, how engaged is anybody at any one point? It's only when I see the thing from Shopify being like, hey, we're going to raise your fees unless you tell us no, and then I'm like, well, then I'm going to tell you no.
It's the democracy thing, right? If you don't vote, you don't get your say in the thing.
Right, but a survey is kind of one of those things where I'm like on our side too, right? If we put out a survey to our community to ask them questions about that kind of tell us more about what it is that you're interested in, what you want, the people who are casually involved with our videos might never see this survey, or they'll see it and be like, I'm not interested in answering that. But the people who are very hardcore are going to be very interested in telling us what they think and giving us information on stuff. And I'm like, right. But how indicative of that is that of what maybe a larger audience is interested in anyway? Because it's like, we're hearing from people that they like all of our stuff. I'm like, that's great. But
you have to sort of extrapolate to a larger audience
and figure out what do all these people who show up casually, the 100,000 people who show up to watch a Magic video, but only 5,000 of them are the ones who are willing to fill out a survey. It's like, are we getting an accurate portrayal of what all those people are?
Of course not, but that's really a hard and impossible thing for us to do.
It is. It's very difficult. And yeah, it's, oh, hey, it did it again. It's Friday.
And
speaking of very difficult,
Google screwed us over again.
As somebody mentioned in the chat, and I remember at the time, speaking of community, Unity communities, I remember at the time that there was actually several very long-running Unity community groups
and events
that decided to shut down in response to the runtime fee. They were like, we can no longer. This is no longer a product that we wish to put forward. So.
Which that's a strong position to take as well for people who are your biggest backers, to have them turn around and say like, whoa, hang on, we were making community events because we all like using this engine, and now we've found out that you want to take this step against that. And it is very telling when people who are willing to take their own time to organize an event or to try to wrangle entire community, they turn around and be like, okay, hang on. And you're going to do what to this group
those
of people?
are your most...
Yeah, these are your people, and they're saying, you're treating all of us people like crap. Well, I can do something about that. I can cancel the event that we were going to have because screw you.
I would, because to be honest, most people don't seem to understand that events like that aren't necessarily put on by the people who actually run the things, which means you're going to have people who show up who decide that they're going to let you know all the complaints.
Yeah.
And you can't do shit.
Absolutely.
Speaking of something that has happened that might annoy some people, Flappy Bird.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is even...
People got really excited for a half second when they're like, oh my God, Flappy Bird's coming back?
So this is hard. Like,
I mean...
Yeah, that's the thing, like, about being excited. It's like, I feel like it's hard to be excited or even be that disappointed in this. Like, I mean, for one thing, Flappy Bird, look, the game was made in 3 days.
Yeah.
It is not... I'm not in any way...
Are you a Flappy Bird fan?
I'm not in any way saying that it wasn't made by a very talented developer. Mm-hmm. But it was made in 3 days.
Yeah.
It is not a very complicated game.
No.
It happened to lock into a certain zeitgeist at the time.
Sure.
But it is one of the most replicated games.
Yeah.
Cloned games thing. It's a little bit like Wordle in the sense that like the game itself is incredibly simple.
Yes.
It just was like in the right place at the right time. But like it's the idea that the world has been crying out for another Flappy Birds game is just like not true.
Because
like,
there are a dozen different Flappy Bird games that were developed after Flappy Bird went away.
There's versions of Flappy Bird in like I can think of at least like 2 or 3 other video games that have versions of Flappy Bird in them.
I had a game called SF Cave for my Palm Pilot, for my Handera 330, in fact. So it was like like running back in the day, like Palm OS 3 or whatever it was. It's like this, and all it is tap on the screen to go up and then let go to go down, and tap on the screen to go up and let go to go down, right? And it's like that is literally all the thing is. It's like this game goes back to the Commodore 64 and to all these other where you just hold down a space bar, you let go and stuff like that. This whole mechanic has always existed. It just all the lines lined up at the right way for people to be like, I want to play this game. And then it went away and people lost their shit because they're like, wait, we were all playing that. And now it is going away. And that made everyone rise to a fever pitch, right? Like, imagine if everybody was playing Wordle and in the middle of Wordle disappeared. Everyone would lose their minds.
And then of course people, moved into that and filled that gap. All that. Anyway, and so the big thing about this is that this game called Flappy Bird is back. There's a thing about the for whatever reason the copyright on the word on the name Flappy Bird for a video game I guess expired, which seems like a very short amount of time for it to expire. I don't know what the situation is with that, but whatever the case, or it was abandoned deliberately, or whatever the case.
It wasn't being defended.
When did Flappy Bird come out? How many?
2014.
Yeah,
I think
so
somebody said
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, so whatever the case, it was bought up by a company. And so this idea that like, oh, the legions of Flappy Bird fans have worked bye. It's like, it's just thing. It apparently was going to be like there was going to be like crypto stuff in it. What that actually means, who knows? That seemed to have been ripped out before it sort of went public, even though there are all these weird sort of
I mean, it would be
bits
hilarious.
of it left. There's actually before the actual the sort of main video game sites picked up on the Flappy Bird thing. There was a very well researched article or post. Does it have the on varunch.ch/Flappybird? I'll post the link here because it's really interesting. Because this guy, well, I guess this is not before it got picked up, but this guy was like, "Hey, Flappy Bird," but then he actually spent the work to go in, looking and did some searching for things that were part of the flappybird.org site that weren't like linked to from anywhere because they had been like disconnected.
Right.
Finding alternate versions of previous builds of the Flappy Bird game. I think he found a site map that had some links to things that were separate on non-working versions of the game that had like older interfaces.
All right.
That had references to crypto coins and stuff.
Earn points, win rewards.
Yeah.
Connect your wallet.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Create your wallet, future rewards, and then there's stuff about. This is like a previous build, and yeah, this is the one of the screenshots that we put in the article here. But yeah, introducing the Flapathon. Flapathon is a Flappy Bird's limited time flap to earn event exclusively on Telegram.
Ugh.
Don't miss the chance to mine points before the full rehatched Flappy Bird launches in Web 2 and Web 3, both at the same time.
Oh, good. Jesus.
That's like Web 5.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you add them together.
It's like RAID 5, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The God, when you said Telegram, I just went, oh no, because there's just something about whenever anybody mentions Telegram, I'm like, oh, something shifty is going on.
Yeah,
with whatever this is.
I know you like went on a bit of a tear about how who cares about Flappy Bird and whatnot, or like who cares that Flappy Bird is back. But the truth is, it didn't have to be Flappy Bird. They saw a trademark they could register, that they could do whatever, and it's got name recognition.
Yep.
Because even I didn't play Flappy Bird at all because I didn't care, but I still know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. They just need that Flappy Bird.
Yeah,
and
then they were
name
going
recognition
to clearly
thing.
grift it to
And you
make
can have,
something.
Yeah, a little different outfits for your bird. Anyway,
Like Crossy Road.
Don't you dare drag Crossy Road through the mud.
Let's not do anything.
It's hard to. So anyway, this is obviously bullshit thing. Although I do find it a little bit difficult to get like too worked up about it, in the sense that Flappy Bird is not like some beloved property. It was around for a while. The fact that the most interesting thing I think about Flappy Bird is the idea that the developer, he made this thing in 3 days, put it up, it started making tons and tons and tons of money. He realized that the reason why it was making tons and tons and tons of money is that a lot of people were spending way more time on it than they should.
Yeah.
And that made him feel uncomfortable.
It wasn't just like a 5-minute, I'm going to play a game while waiting in line for a thing. It became too good of a one more, I can do this.
Yeah, and he felt uncomfortable
for like hours.
with how much that people were playing it, and so he voluntarily removed it from the App Store. There's lots of other versions, again, clones of Flappy Bird.
Oh yeah,
by people who do not have that
same compunction.
But I think a lot of like games, even for a little while, kind of had like a little mini game section that would often be like essentially a Flappy Bird thing, right?
Like people in the chat, and I was saying, that there's so many games that have Flappy Bird or something like Flappy Bird in the game already.
I'm kind of surprised now that I think about it that my Mastodon client doesn't have a Flappy Bird alike in it. Because it has other games built
Yeah,
into
I
it.
know, and it's weird, and I ignore it.
It's got a little pool game and stuff, and which is it's a lot because it's like it has to have realistic physics for pool and stuff. And I'm like, wow, you put a lot of work into making little things here to do that are kind of just a fun little waste of time. Why not put in Flappy Bird?
Anyway, the other story we have here is the Australian Ratings Board.
Other things you shouldn't put in video games, apparently.
Has done this thing of they've decided that any game that has quote unquote loot boxes, so things that you can buy with real or in-game currency, even with in-game currency, things that you can buy and it's a randomly generated output, makes it M rated.
Just right away, just like that's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
You got a gotcha
I
game,
think,
rated M.
Didn't that also include anything that
Actually,
had
let me-
a casino-like?
Let me double check that whether it's in-game currency, because that might I know it's the casino, if it's casino, like it goes 18.
Right, which is a different kind of rating.
And the casino one is whether it's real or fake. I think the loot boxes do have to be real money.
And that's I believe there's a big distinction in the fact that the M rating doesn't mean much of anything other than it's part of this rating system, and the 18 rating though is like you can't sell it to somebody under 18.
I guess that means that now they can finally let everybody in Love Live get their tits out because they're all rated M for mature anyway.
Sure, that's definitely what that means.
Don't even
Now,
play Love Live.
I would be interested to
Fire Emblem Heroes.
None of the articles that I was reading had, because one of the things, like I know here in North America, an M rating, like M, it's not illegal to sell something
No,
M rated to
a 5-year-old.
a young person, but I think every single video game retailer has a policy to not do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, at least where we live.
And most, and so there's the thing about and it's the same thing with rated 18 games you could sell, but again, a game rated 18 in North America anyway, a game rated 18A or whatever is effectively banning the game because no retailer sells games that are rated 18A.
Okay, fair.
Unless it's like a adult store particular or something.
Right.
None of the video game retailers sell 18A games, which is an awkward situation. Steam does, in certain circumstances. So I don't know how Australia handles it in terms of retailers and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Australia, of course, was famous up until 2015 or so. They didn't have a rating above what our equivalent would be, like the 14A rating, like the PG rating. They didn't have a rating above that. For video games, anything above that couldn't be sold in the country at all.
Yeah, right. It's funny because the whole reason why we have ESRB ratings is the kind of self-preservation aspect, right? To say that, oh well, we are going to rate these things because we don't want to be regulated by the government. The only reason why companies self-regulate or will come up with a standards board that exists outside of the government is because they're saying we don't want the government to regulate.
So you don't have to regulate us. Look, we're
doing a good job of it, right? So therefore, it's a non-binding kind of situation. And you're right. It's like anybody, like you walk into a GameStop in Canada, and if you're like 10 years old and you pick up an M-rated game or 18A rated game or whatever, behind the counter, it doesn't matter if GameStop would ask or not, because you can just buy it right? The whole point of that thing is not to stop anybody from selling you a game in the first place. It's to put up roadblocks to basically make you feel like you can't buy the thing. Because that person behind the counter will see this kid and be like, this game is rated 18A. You don't look like you're 18. So I, by policy of the store, I'm not supposed to sell this to you, and I'm not going to do that. But if that 18-year-old kid behind the counter is like, fuck, whatever, and they just sell it to the kid, and the kid goes off.
Yeah, it will say it has to be an M-rated game, because if it is an 18A rated game, they won't be selling that.
But they won't, like, the parents turn around, it's like they'll make a complaint to the store. Maybe they'll even try to sue the store. But the store will just be like, that's clearly an employee that went out of whatever, we're firing them, they get fired, whatever, that's kind of it. But it's like there's nothing in a law somewhere that says that you cannot do that.
Yeah, it's a policy, an industry policy thing rather than an actual legal thing.
And I have worked retail and have sold some video games, and when something comes up with an M rating, usually the till says, is this person over 18?
Yeah.
You have to ask for ID, and if you don't, then you get complained at by the parent later because you didn't sell their child the video game that they think should have been fine.
There's that too.
Not the other way around.
Yes.
It's
Which is funny because movies are rated by, like in Alberta, the Alberta Film Classification Board, which I believe is an arm of the government, classifies films, gives them their ratings. I think it's the same in BC as well. There's an arm in BC that classifies films, and I think it is an arm of, there's a ministry that actually oversees that. I'm reasonably certain, which means that technically then, the government is the one saying, this is what we're saying about this thing, and that you cannot let kids in to watch a movie if they're under a certain age.
But again, I'm pretty sure there's no actual legal ramifications.
Yeah, it's going to be the same thing with movies.
It's all down to complaints.
It's still it's like there might be some like negligence or like liability thing, but there isn't actually a legal consequence. Anyway, it's an interesting, and of course, for the screenshot in the corner, I always, because this has actually come up in a couple of situations, I always like when it talks about how you're video games wanting to stay away from gambling and stuff. My go-to example is always the Pokemon slot machine thing in, is it Pokemon Red and Blue that had that?
Was it a slot machine? I know there was like a Voltorb.
But it costs you in-game currency to play it, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, there's just like a slot machine.
Okay.
There's a whole room full.
Maybe it was slot machines too.
Interesting.
There's a whole room full of slot machines. In a bunch of them,
Because I remember Red and Blue's gambling game that was really hot and a lot of fun to play was like this Voltorb flip thing.
Right.
It is within a room that is full of slot machines.
But so I mean, and in new versions of those games, they've removed those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always find that because of course it's like when you look at these laws, like that's that's how this works, right? It's like even the idea is that any representation of sort of casinos and stuff is not allowed. And in that case, even if it is not using real money, even if it's just in game,
and
it's still
I'm
that representation they don't like. Which
I can kind of understand not being for that, because it's especially within the context of a game where there is like even no online interaction, so that's not even a game that's able to turn real money into a currency to do whatever. That kind of, it feels like hitting too hard. But at the same time, there's so many video game companies that try to weasel in loot boxes and gambling mechanics in such a way that they're like, we can't call it gambling because of reason. And they need to be hit harder because they're definitely trying to like just skirt around things.
It's definitely a tough it's a tough, like, I don't think I could, and this is how, we mentioned it briefly in the thing, like, I've said this before on stream, like, I don't think I could come up with a law that disallows loot boxes while allowing, like, magic packs, like packs of magic cards, or packs packs of baseball cards.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of the sort of blind box packs of stuff that we've sort of considered to be fine for decades.
Right.
But, because of the proliferation of loot boxes and, because companies have gotten more and more sophisticated
Yeah.
in terms of getting people to it, it's one of those things where you basically need to outlaw, like, you can have loot boxes, but you can't do it too well.
Yeah.
Which is a difficult thing to legislate.
I don't know. I'm not so sure it's a bad thing to get rid of the blind box thing.
But yeah, I mean, maybe that...
Even in regards to something like Magic cards.
Yeah.
Like I know that changes everything in the dynamic of how they do a lot of stuff and drafting and all kinds of things, but at the same time, I don't know that it's
I'm not saying that's
better.
the end of the world. I'm just saying that would have larger ramifications.
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
But,
and I think that's probably the hard part of working on trying to make those laws, right? Is trying to keep certain things the same while stopping other things from happening because they overlap.
Yeah.
In ways that you never would have thought of earlier when stuff was starting.
Anyway. And then finally, so there was Cameron wrote a story about the Space Marine 2.
Oh, right.
Now, to be fair, we're going to still say alleged because the company the company making Space Marine 2 has not confirmed whether this was indeed Matt Karch, the CEO of whatever the developer is.
So what you're saying?
Saber Interactive.
There's a quote at the center of this that is frustrating people.
Yeah. So there's a quote. Somebody with a username Matt Karch saying that they are Matthew Karch, the CEO of Saber Interactive.
Sure. Yeah.
But we have no way to verify that.
Right.
And Saber Interactive won't confirm or deny.
Right.
This replied to a comment on a video talking about how Space Marine 2 is great because it's like, it doesn't deal with all the, there's no big moral questions. It's all just, run around, shoot guys.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole idea that like, that's what and so he was like, that's what we were going for. It makes me sad that games are all, too many games are about, morality and whatever the thing is. Now.
Warhammer
Space
40K.
Marines, yeah,
So-
Warhammer. I don't.
So there is a little background, little behind the curtain here. We actually had a discussion about this in the sort of editorial Slack, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I pushed back a little bit against this story. Again, not necessarily against doing this story as a story on ChillPoint, but this idea of that, because that this guy's so dumb that he doesn't know the Warhammer 40K, is trying to
It has
a
political
message,
roots. Yeah.
has a message in its political roots and stuff.
Yeah.
And my take was that I don't think that's what he was saying. I think he was saying it as more like from a purely gameplay perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We don't make the character, you're not making any big moral choices. People are, monsters are jumping up, you shoot them. That's what we were going for.
Yeah.
And that's why people like it.
Yeah, if you strip away the Warhammer 40K license and kind of trappings of the whatever, it is literally the game is this and it does this.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, there is obviously making the game like that is into itself, a decision that you have made and has impact on all that kind of stuff. Like that's you're making that decision.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something, and I think Cameron did a great job of sort of separating that out a little bit in this story, talking about how like just setting it within the 40K universe has all sorts of implications that you are sort of there as a at least as sort of an undercurrent.
Yeah.
And in some cases in cutscenes and stuff are sort of there. While from a gameplay perspective you are just blowing things up, there is this sort of other aspect to it. It's a tricky one because it's like if this same comment was posted under a different video that wasn't talking about how it's nice to have this
a different name even, right?
It's right. It's like why? Yeah. If it wasn't posted by the CEO of the company,
Allegedly.
If it wasn't posted under a video talking about how it's nice to have a game that actually caters to like men, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, in a different context, it wouldn't necessarily have been a big thing. In this one,
it's kind of, it's weird because when I look at it, I'm just like, I don't know, I don't really get why it's a story, because for one, Warhammer, not my jam. I'm not gonna go watch that video, so I'm missing like any context of what's going on there. I do think it at like this weird core of it, there is this thing that happens where we get a lot of people who are like, why can't we just play games and not do whatever anymore? And I think there's just this frustration for some people where they play a game and it's fun, and for them it's a turn your brain off game. But for a lot of other people, it's no, there's all this cool like political stuff in it, there's all these things we could talk about, and you just have kind of a mishmash of things not working out between two different groups of people, and then we all argue about it. So
anyway,
yeah. Also, I heard the computer make a sound,
I did too.
so I'm just kind of.
Hope
Chat's still talking. They heard this
Is
Windows
everything-
sound too.
everything okay?
So I
Yeah, that's not the Ethernet adapter disappearing, I think.
Yeah, back
good.
back in the
apparently it was very loud.
Sorry. Wait, yeah, a while when we were having problems, that was that sound indicated that a little thing had been popped up on the screen saying you're disconnected from the internet. But it sounds like we're still connected.
That's good, because I really wanted. It was like, I'm gonna pause now because
Just to see what happens.
Did we just die?
All right, let's move on. Quickly talk about Crazy Taxi, which
I
is a
like
weird
Crazy
thing to be
Taxi.
talking about right now, but because it's come up in the U.S. election that apparently Tim Walz was a really big Crazy Taxi player.
Yeah.
For
To
the
the-
Dreamcast.
Crazy Taxi for the Dreamcast, to the extent that his wife had to take the Dreamcast away at one point.
I have to go with Tim Walz on this too. It's like I didn't have a Dreamcast or anything, but I did work in an arcade briefly where we had Crazy Taxi, and that when the rare time I had an opportunity to play it, I would play it, but I just like to have it running all the time.
The two things about the story that like, I mean, for one thing, I love Nelson wrote this story, and I very much appreciate his. He's got that BC Ferries arcade really locking it in. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
the BC Ferries, the arcade on the BC Ferries. Now, I wasn't sure whether he meant the arcade that is on the ferry, which exists, or the arcade that is in the ferry terminal, which also exists. Both of them are very sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I only peeked into the arcade on the ferry itself like once.
In the terminal, there's like 2 arcade cabinets.
Oh. Yeah, I've never seen that,
There
but I
were,
don't think we get
anyway.
out of the car often.
Anyway. But I feel like even if you are not, from Vancouver Island and haven't been on a BC ferries, I think there's a touchstone for everybody. Like everybody, at least, of a generation in which arcades were around more often than they are now. You know, if the somewhat if you grew up in, you know, 80s and 90s, I feel like everybody has that. There's like that sort of, you know, something where there wasn't supposed to be an arcade there, really, but there were like, because for whatever reason there ended up being a lot of kids in that area, so they're like, hey, we have this room that we're not doing anything else with. Let's put a few arcade games in it and never look into that room ever again.
They did it like Red Robin did that quite a bit. They would have a little alcove right off the front entrance where they put in like 4 arcade machines. Usually like a
the saddest
Neo
ones,
Geo VS and like a Galaga machine or whatever.
The saddest ones had like 2 machines.
Yeah, but it was like just enough to be like, you can send the kids over to here. They can go there when they've put in their order, and then mom and dad can just sit and have they can drink at the table without the kids around, and then when the food hits the table, they can go get the kids and drag them back and be like, okay, it's time to eat. You know,
and for the couple bucks worth of quarters, it's probably worth it.
Just to buy some silence, just to be like, yeah, here, you got some, here's some, go play. And like, yeah, that was the thing. That's like the random mall that didn't even have like a storefront that had an arcade in it. It had like a hallway down to the bathrooms that had like 4 arcade machines in it, right? Like, this is a thing I think that we all encountered. If you're of this age, is that you ran into this somewhere, you'd see this happen.
If you're like 20 now, you probably haven't.
Yeah.
And so the kinds of games that would you be at that Crazy Taxi obvious is talked about this. Turtles in Time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, along with that the like Justice League or X-Men like beat 'em up game.
Yeah. X-Men.
Usually 2-player, but
I don't know
sometimes
which one, but definitely,
one.
there was definitely the X-Men.
I think it was just X-Men, and it was just like 4 wide. There's a lot of ones that came out of that same time, but like, or you'd walk down, there'd be like
the Simpsons brawler game too. Yeah,
there'd be like an Operation Wolf machine. Sometimes you'd walk past or whatever. Like, this is all pre-DDR, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'd have every arcade had a pole position machine.
Yeah.
And they started tearing those out eventually to put in Cruis'n USA.
I wasn't allowed to
stuff.
go play on any of the arcade machines as a kid.
Anyway,
I only went to the arcade to play DDR.
Yeah.
That was it. And that was like after I was old enough to do things on my own.
And that was a more recent invention. And Crazy Taxi was one of these like late stage arcade things.
And Sunset Riders.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
Which we have commemorated in our chat with the greed emote.
Colleges usually have like an arcade machine or two by like the billiard tables, right? So it's like the go hunt deer.
Oh,
game.
They'll have Big Buck Hunter, or they'll have Golden Tee. They'll usually have Golden Tee. I can never understand why.
Shooty game.
I don't know why they would.
Bury me with my money.
But
that's what that emote is from.
So now the multiple things we're hearing about Tim Walls' Dreamcast, one being that somebody has made the Crazy Taxi Tim Walls edition where they got rid of Gus and they put him in, and they put in a bunch of voice clips.
So they not only put in Tim Walls and Kamala Harris as characters in the game, they used voice clips from speeches that they made to replace the voice clips in the thing. At least in the screenshots I saw, like Kamala Harris, her car has like the top of it, like the taxi thing says like VP, and like the front license plate is like White House. What House?
And the other story to do with this is that somebody actually has come forward and said, I have Tim Walls' Dreamcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What?
There's so what happened was that the Dreamcast, this is what I read off ours, is that, I think it was on ours, somebody had
I didn't hear that part.
Bought it from them.
Okay.
And for like $25 or whatever it was, right? Because there was no value in a Dreamcast.
It's got Tim Walt's fingernail marks on it as he was...
His name written.
And then like somehow I think they bought it, but then some other dude ended up getting it in a trade or something from them, and now he's the one who has it. Or it was vice versa. It was that they donated it and the guy picked it up, and then somebody bought it off of that dude and was like, oh yeah, this is like the governor's Dreamcast or some shit. It's like, oh, that's funny. Oh, that's really funny.
Now the question is, did they have the VMUs? Because the VMU is where the high score would be stored,
Yeah,
right?
no, I don't think they had any of that. I think it was
Like
just the base
The
unit.
Dreamcast doesn't have the internal stuff, right? It was
No.
all stored in the VMU.
That's true. It's funny because this is just completely off the rails now, but I was looking, I'm reading a Twitter thread, a thread on something awful that's about old Twitter. But not old Twitter, but it's like post your favorite tweets, and it dates back to 2019. And just out of nowhere, somebody dropped some tweets from, oh, lol, check out our governor. And it was Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota with taking pictures of his dog, his black lab that he has. Name is Buster Scout. I learned that the other day. Laying on the couch and laying on the windowsill where the cat likes to lay down, specifically to piss off the cat. And he's like, oh, the dog's up to his old tricks and taking pictures of this and sharing this. And I'm like, I love that the governor is just like, I'm like, Tim Walz is like this really wholesome dude. Like, he's just like, look at my dog screwing with my cat. This is really funny. And he's posting it to Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, I like this kind of thing. And last night, then I watched a video of him. He's doing they just posted this. And he owns a 1976 International Harvester Scout, which is like, it looks like a Ford Bronco, essentially, right? It's just like this little truck. And it's in immaculate condition, so he's clearly had somebody repaint it and stuff. But he was like, I'm going to do some work on this today. I'm going to show you how the cruise control works. I'm also going to tell you about why you should vote for me and Kamala. And it was like a little 4-minute video, and I'm like, I love that. I know this is a marketing exercise, but it's so goddamn endearing to me that you own a 76 Scout, of all things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like the Dreamcast is going through like a nostalgia thing right now because like Limited Run Games has that whole Dreamcast selection of merch they're pre-ordering or selling with like trading cards or I think you can get like a keychain of the VMU and different things. I just feel like I've seen a lot more people than just Ian talking about the Dreamcast lately.
It did go through a bit of a renaissance about 10 years ago when everyone realized that you could go to GameStop and you could buy, you could still, I think it was 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, where you could go to GameStop and buy like refurbished Dreamcasts and they were $50 or whatever. And everyone's like, oh yeah, the Dreamcast. Actually, I should go get a Dreamcast because I never got one for my collection and they are $50. And that started driving the prices up. To the point where if you try to find a Dreamcast now, they can be quite expensive because
I feel like
I mean,
again people of sort of our age, I feel like a lot of people, and maybe part of the reason why the Dreamcast didn't succeed as a console, but I feel like a lot of people there's like one game that they loved on Dreamcast that has never been put Dreamcast seems like the source of the most like one-off games that were never put on any other platform. I don't know if that's true, but that's just my impression. And so people are like, man, that game. Like, oh, I want a Dreamcast just to play that one game.
There are people who take the attitude that it's like, oh, but it was way better on that. Like Crazy Taxi came out for the Dreamcast.
It came out for like everything.
And then it came out for GameCube later. And then it ended up on the Xbox also. And it went to a bunch of different places, but it was like, it was only Dreamcast for a brief period of time. And then at some point when it was like, we're sinking the ship, that they put the game out on GameCube and other places.
I mean, for me, the Dreamcast was, I was a kid, so we were clearly not going to buy one. And the only time I got my hands on a Dreamcast was at the Blockbuster when they had the demo set up, when I could play the Sonic game that was 3D and super cool because you're running through a city, and I was so confused by what was going on in that game because it was always in the middle of something. Yeah.
Anyway. Let's move on to a couple of things. I actually wanted to, because we didn't do ChillPoint last week, there was a couple of stories that I wanted to possibly talk about from last week.
Okay.
That didn't show up in the article, or it didn't show up in the thing.
The show proper, yeah.
Yeah. And one of them was, speaking of things that are getting popular, so the prices are going up. Did you, and this is unlikely, but did you buy the physical release of Concord? The game that was only around for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Canceled.
People
No.
are chasing that now. Yeah.
It turns out physical discs of Concord are going for like $150, $200 on eBay.
I
It
did.
wouldn't work.
I did.
No.
I did. Just after the game got pulled, though, I did see somebody's Instagram reel of one of the voice actresses in the game going and buying the game because she was super excited that she was in this game and interacting with the people at the store who were really excited to find out that she was in the game, and they were like taking selfies and stuff. And I'm like, oh no, because it was like the day the game launched
I
or
can't
whatever.
wait to find out. I can't wait.
It was really cute.
Yeah, I can't wait to find out that one of the lots we have for Desert Bus this year is going to be like a Concord copy signed by the whole dev team.
That would be really funny.
It'd be just sad.
It would be, but it'd be a thing to put on your shelf, right?
Yeah, it did.
The
It
sign-
did have a physical
All
release.
the signatures are like, do you have something for us to get?
Yeah, will work for food. You're
I'm really curious to see if we see
Will
that
come
game
for
come
cool.
back in some other form or something in like a year.
Yeah, maybe,
I just kind of I feel like that story is not
not finished.
not finished, not yet.
Anyway, couple of Destiny stories.
Oh, good.
Now, you may have heard that the final shape just happened. Was the latest expansion for Destiny.
Yeah, I heard it was a cube.
The final shape,
Okay.
which was the finale of the story that has been happening in Destiny 2.
Right. Which makes me feel like that's it for Destiny 2, right? That's what the final.
I think that's
shape
supposed to be the
means.
point.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Well, okay,
But-
maybe not.
they're not gonna just like shut the game down.
Oh yeah, who would ever shut a game down?
So
I mean, they have to make sure everybody plays through the ending before they shut the game down, right? Those are the rules.
That's the rule.
Bungie has released a new roadmap for the Destiny franchise called Codename Frontiers that showcases the future of Destiny 2. There will be 2 medium-sized expansions every year.
Wait,
In
Destiny
2020,
2?
Destiny 2.
Wow.
But I thought the game was done.
No.
The final shape happened.
The I guess that the Light and Darkness saga
Okay.
is done.
Okay.
But now there's more, I guess. In 2025, Bungie will release the Codename Apollo expansion during the summer and the Codename Behemoth expansion in the winter. I wonder how big the Behemoth one will be.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, there will be
Surprisingly small.
4 major updates of free content each year, running alongside the expansions. They will offer new stories, locations, missions, raids, and dungeons. Seasonal updates. So
Sure.
there's just more.
I really just thought they like want to move on to Destiny 3 or something by now.
Yeah, Destiny 1
Because
didn't
isn't
last as long as Destiny 2, did it?
Yeah,
Destiny 2's been out for quite some time. The whole final shape thing really felt like it was shaping up to be kind of an ending we're gonna.
But there's no.
I
there's
mean, I
been
guess
no.
sure.
There's not even been a rumor that Destiny 3 is in the works. Like I haven't seen anybody ever mention that. Oh yeah, Destiny 3
no.
is certainly being worked on. So I guess they're just gonna
I guess
kind
they're
of.
just gonna keep making more.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, if people are
Okay.
enjoying it, then great.
So it's saying, they say the end of the Light and Darkness saga, which I feel like up until very recently, that was just called Destiny 2 story. They didn't actually have, it wasn't like, they were just like, no. That wasn't the Destiny 2 story. That was the Light and Darkness saga.
I see.
That was just the first part or one part of it.
All right.
Doesn't mean an end to multi-year campaigns. We're proud of the final shape and the ending we created for Light and Darkness saga, and we knew that episode would act as an epilogue. We knew that the episode that would follow would act as an epilogue, tying up loose threads, but also setting us up for what's next.
Okay. All right.
So they're going to be continuing. One of the things that they decided to continue with in another piece of news, is a super cool Nerf gun. They made a Destiny 2 Nerf.
Right.
Like they made a special Nerf gun.
The Nerf gun that they plagiarized somebody else's design for.
Yeah. So they made a big gun.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Ad Block.
Oh, the Ace of Spades.
So super cool gun. This is also larger than it looks in this picture. I don't know if.
So when you say it looks larger than it does in this photo,
No, it is like it's. There's just. It is larger than it looks in that photo. It is a very large gun. Like those are, I guess that's like centimeter square.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, it's bigger than you would expect.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, that's true. Foxmar, one of our mods, has one.
Banana for scale.
Yeah, and I think he has a keyboard. Yeah, he's a keyboard for scale. Here,
Also acceptable.
So what's funny is that you said it's a lot larger than you expect, and yeah, looking at it, yeah, that's a 10 key. Oh my god, that is a big gun.
I mean, when you think about it, it's basically like a 6-shooter, but scaled up because it's got to fit
into the hands of a ghost man.
Well, it's got to fit Nerf gun.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a hand cannon.
They're all ghosts, aren't they? The Guardians are all most like reasonably deadish people.
Maybe I don't actually know the lore.
Anyway,
I just like how you were like, oh, it's got to fit in the hands of a ghost man.
That wizard came from the moon.
Now to be clear,
everybody comes from the moon,
right? That's a big gun.
To be clear, the problem that they ran into though is that that's a gun from the game, but that particular art of the gun, that particular thing, including like all the like battle damage and stuff on it, was exactly a copy of a piece of fan art, like literally like stuck on, like
yeah. So, probably one of those things where somebody had to Google their own artwork.
They just were like,
found something else and used it.
Like, you need to design this thing, and it's like, right, what am I going to do? I guess I could just go to Redbubble and see if anybody's made a Destiny gun thing and steal it from there.
So they are crediting the person now. Update, the artist will be credited. I don't know if they're going to get any money.
Well, that was the
paid.
That
okay.
was the that was the complaint, right? That this had happened. Like they found out and they were like, "Don't worry, we're gonna take care of that." But then somebody else had said this kind of thing had happened to them like a year ago, and they still hadn't gotten paid. And so the community manager was like, we got to talk to you about that." That's what I believe. That's what Graham said in the after chat.
They are currently in contact with Nerf to get the artist credited and paid.
Yeah, I believe the intent is there.
And the artist says, I want to say once again, people at Bungie, especially the community manager who credited me, have been incredibly nice and professional. So,
good.
Yay!
Yeah, it's fun. When you go into Hot Topic, you can actually just see parts of the internet laying out in physical spaces that definitely didn't get paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see if this has gotten taken down already. Looks like it hasn't.
Project. Yeah.
Well,
it's
once a fan project gets reported on, too much of spotlight is there and goes away usually.
This is super cool. So there's a fan project called The Legend of Zelda Dungeons of Infinity. Somebody has made it's a procedurally generated roguelike Link to the Past dungeon crawler. So it generates a dungeon of the kind that are in Zelda Link to the Past.
Yep.
But procedurally generated and different each time. You have to go through. The goal of the game is to descend through a maze of many enemy-infested dungeons, and you have to defeat Agnem down at the bottom of the. On the way you find, so it's roguelike, so you find different weapons and enemies and treasures and stuff. Sounds like a super neat idea, as people have, lots of people have pointed out. He says, this is not a ROM hack. It was created in Game Maker Studio from scratch using the original
tile
assets.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, who knows whether that will sadly stick around. But
interestingly enough, though, like, if you had made it with all brand new tile sets and you didn't call it Legend of Zelda, it was just like, it sure looks and feels a bit like Zelda because the control and the play style and all the tile sets are different colors or whatever, but it's like, no, but it has that 16-bit Link to the Past energy, right? Like if it really feels like that is a thing you could just make and do. But this is supposed to, the thing about a fan project is they're supposed to be loving homages to
it's people trying stuff out with stuff that's already kind of been established, right? Because it's a little easier to maybe start on something that's not just a blank page.
Yeah, that's true.
It does feel...
and they're giving this away, I think, is the idea. It's like, if you want to play this, you can just download it and play it. Yeah.
It does feel frustrating to me that when I see these things, because they are so, like this guy, you're saying, I've been working on this full time for 4 years. Mm-hmm. It is by far my greatest achievement. It's on the page.
Oh, no.
So I hope it doesn't get shut down, but I am concerned that it will.
I mean, it's called The Legend of Zelda. Like, it uses
Dungeons
the
of
logo.
Infinity.
Like, it's like The Legend of Zelda is in the name.
Maybe use a couple more years to change some stuff around.
It's just like, I don't know. Yeah. I've talked about this before, but this idea of like the sort of lost potential is something that I find frustrating, that it's like so much incredible talent and creativity is put towards doing something with somebody else's IP that you will never, certainly never be able to make money on.
Yeah. And
probably will get nuked from orbit.
Yeah. And
it's just sad to see that sort of opportunity cost. I always remember seeing, I think it was a TED Talk or something by the guy who made, is it mixtape.io, which was a site where you could like upload MP3s and like upload your own MP3s and like mix them together and then like send it to people, so you could like make your own mixtapes. Okay. Stuff. I think that's what it was. Anyway, the title of the talk was like, don't make a music service.
Right.
And he's like, the number of, the number of worker years that have been wasted making very cool services to do with music that will either never see the light of day or they get to a certain point and then get completely shut down by copyright concerns. He's just saying like, there's so many more better things to do with your time.
You could build way different other projects. Just don't.
And it's just like it's that like lost opportunity cost of incredibly intelligent people, smart, creative people working on something that won't happen.
Yeah,
it's just kind of sad sometimes.
Yep.
What else we got going on here? This was mostly I mostly marked this because
I wanted to know more about this one.
The Italian police have seized 52.8 million in fake video game consoles from a trafficking ring.
All right.
So there's fake video game console trafficking rings.
Yep.
Which is awesome. The police called the operation Coin Up 80.
If we were to assume that this $52.8 million is, let's assume that every console's about $200 to buy. Maybe if we could also assume $300 to buy.
Well, usually because they're fake, they're cheaper than buying whatever it is you're.
So you're looking at 52.8 million becomes 528,000 if we move the decimal place over 2. And then we divide that by 2. So it's about 250,000 consoles. Holy crap.
No, okay, so here's the deal.
Great.
They said in a news release that it seized approximately 12,000 video game consoles.
Okay.
On which a total of 47 million pirated video games were loaded.
See, that's where it comes down to. So it's because I get ads for these things all the time where it's like, get this very much looking like a Game Boy thing, and it'll have every game from like whatever on it.
It'll be filled with ROMs.
Yeah. There were Nintendo consoles, assorted handheld devices, counterfeit fight sticks. They say the consoles originated from China with distribution from Italian companies tied up in the trafficking ring.
No.
The consoles were also sold at physical stores. The devices, beyond being fake, were not compliant with Europe's consumer safety standards. This is the sad sentence.
Mm-hmm.
They were all destroyed by the authorities in accordance with Italian law, according to the news release. I mean, there were like weird Chinese knockoff consoles, but I bet there was still some good stuff on there.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the weird thing, right? Like I've seen people walking around, and I've seen lots of videos on YouTube now about like, oh, you can get this rad little Game Boy type thing.
Yeah, and some of them are really well functional and like do quite a good job.
They're essentially analog pockets. Like they're like that kind of idea of we have made an aftermarket version of a game console, like usually a portable game console that can play all sorts of ROMs if you want to be the one to break the law and put the ROMs on there. We have just made you a tool. We've made you a hammer by which you can do all this stuff if that's what you want to do. And yeah, I see people like incredibly happy with them and like, you know, you can buy this thing for like $15, you know, like that kind of idea. Of course, in this case, we load them up with a whole bunch of games.
I mean, you can still buy a bunch of them that have all the ROMs already preloaded, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted like a bunch of people to go to like a Italian police auction and come back with sweet retro consoles.
Right, yeah. It's like, we seized all this stuff. We got to get rid of it now. What should we do? Well, we'll sell it.
No. It's always the destruction choice.
I mean, I remember, you know, back in the day, one of my buddies who had a connection in Japan.
Yeah.
Had one of those like, you know, you get the like Game Boy. It's like a Game Boy cart that has like 500 games on it.
Yeah.
And like half of them are not like weird games.
Yeah.
And like a lot of them kind of crash when you start.
Because it's kind of the Action 52 thing of like some of these things are legit, but then the rest of them are just like the same game over and over and they crash all the time. Yeah. There's that new UFO 50, which is a kind of an homage to the Action 52 thing, but it's like 50 games that are actually good. Like a bunch of people made like 8-bit games of like things that feel like of that era, but they're meant to be like, oh, but they're all part of this, you know, UFO 50 cartridge, you know. Yeah. Anyway,
Diablo 4's item shop has made $150 million.
Wow.
Which
Damn.
is notable for a couple reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But it's not it's not that surprisingly large amount of money considering how popular Diablo 4 has been, and you know it's been around for a while. They've made, apparently, like the actual game is over $1 billion in revenue from actually selling the game.
Okay. Yeah.
Stuff. Now it's somewhat relevant because the like real money shop in Diablo was kind of a very controversial thing when it first started.
Phones,
The best part, though, is the reason why we know that is because it was the senior product manager, Harrison Froschke, on his LinkedIn page, posted that he posted that he had efforts on the monetization strategy for store cosmetics, pricing, bundle offers, personalized discounts, and roadmap planning has driven over $150 million in lifetime revenue for Diablo 4.
Oh, he just came right out and said it.
But it's not like it was done like as like his part of his resume.
Yeah.
And then people are like, that's not actually public information.
Yeah. That's kind of surprising.
It's strange how much information you can get off of LinkedIn these days.
Yeah.
And that profile has since been deleted.
I bet.
Oh, the whole
my
profile?
God. That's because finding out that they made that much money off of their item shop. I'm kind of like, not a thing we normally hear about when you announce like the revenue that something has made. You just kind of fold all that stuff into. It's like Fire Emblem Heroes, making $1 billion.
Yeah,
And we find that out, and it's like, right, they're not going to break down, like they're not going to go into like higher detail about here's what this live service game has made. They're just going to be like, this is the general revenue we've made off of this game. It's this much money, and we're not going to know how much of it is because of whale spending. This is the concentration on people who play it the most versus least, and like that kind of thing. So
I'm just trying to think of it as like in the context, in the context of like a more regular resume.
Mm-hmm.
It would be like, if you put on your resume like, designed a spreadsheet system that innovated our product, our product inventory management, and saved the company a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then people read that and they're like, wait, the inventory management thing is a spreadsheet that you just
Yeah.
just a spreadsheet you made? You told us it was like this big complicated program that you wrote. Anyway.
This miserable access database that I forced to write for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Microsoft Access.
Mm.
What else we got going on here? Now, this is a story that don't necessarily want to go in, or I don't necessarily want to go into it that much just because I don't have all the details
That's fair.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But something that I saw that people were surprised that we didn't talk about on ChillPoint was about the Annapurna Interactive. Basically, the actual
Everybody quit.
The actual like interactive part of Annapurna, like the game development part.
Yeah.
Left.
A mass resignation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently there was, there was a lot of discussions about that it was going to be like spun off.
Right.
They wanted that to happen, and I guess the discussions broke down, and
Something did not work out, and everybody resigned.
But that is a very drastic choice for...
You don't usually see that.
No, because you would have people like... You might have somebody leak stuff to the media. You might have some kind of like recrimination going back and forth, yelling at everybody about like, oh, well, they're not doing this, or they want to do this, and those kind of things. Instead, it's just... Everyone just said, well, then fuck it. And they just kind of all left. And it's like, you normally see that kind of thing when... if you're having a mass resignation, like workers are leaving, that's when they're looking at management being like, you have said some nasty shit and we don't want to be here when that hits the fan. That's why you would have a mass resignation. So something is cooking there where a bunch of people are like, we don't like what you have planned for us. And rather than try to make anything good out of it, we would just like to not be here when the bad thing happens. But we don't know, right? Like,
and
it's like
apparently we're talking even some of the executive level people left.
Yeah.
So there was some sort of like
something from head office, kind of. It feels like, right?
Yeah.
Way up the chain.
So anyway, now I had the other thing that I saw people talking about this. It is important to note, as happened with like the Humble Bundle thing.
The Humble Games.
Humble Games.
Yeah.
The Annapurna does develop games, but they are also a publisher.
Right.
So,
Well,
so basically, so like this isn't like all of the games that you.
Annapurna's mostly a publisher.
Yeah.
The last time I heard they were talking about their first game that they were going to make in house.
Oh, I thought they had made some more in-house stuff.
I think it was just the one that they were, because they made kind of a big deal about it during a presentation like a year or two ago.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so that's the thing is that they, so games that you enjoy that say, Annapurna Interactive at the beginning of the game, it's not like they're gone. The people who made those games are still around. They'll just have to find a new publisher, I guess, or something will have to be changed.
I think that's still being worked out.
If they're in this position, so I'm reading a thing from chat. The Maricat posted that I'm assuming this is coming out of the article. They were originally going to fold the company, the Annapurna Interactive, into the parent company, and they were attempting to negotiate having it be spun off as a separate unit, independent of the main company. So, interesting idea. They all quit after the owner, Larry Ellison's daughter, refused to show up for meetings. So
yeah, it sucks that you can't have your own name.
Yeah. So but anyway, the idea that to all walk away. Well, Annapurna Interactive is still a going concern. It still exists, and anybody out there who's like, I'm looking to work for a video game publisher, and I assume that they still have plans to keep the whole thing going. This is the time when they will. They don't have nobody they have to renegotiate anything with, obviously. They're just going to say, well, we're doing this now. We're going to set it all up differently and do this. Everything we currently publish through Annapurna Interactive, we still continue to publish because we have rights to that, unless people start doing that thing where like AgroCrab did, where they were like, hey, we've decided we don't want this publisher to publish our game anymore, and we're just going to yank it and figure out a way to publish it ourselves.
Yeah.
Unless that happens en masse, you're just going to see them probably hire a bunch of people to work for whatever this new unit is that they're going to have, and life will go on for Annapurna Interactive as it always does.
I don't know. Humble Games is gone. Annapurna's game division is gone. Who's next? Devolver Digital? F-17?
I mean...
Any bets on who couples next?
There's literally Humble Bundle, speaking of which, Humble Bundle just is doing a current bundle that's like... games that were Adult Swim games.
Right. Adult Swim games kind of.
Yeah, that's an interesting pivot for them to do that. That feels like something was going on at the company that they were like, we're going to make a point about something. Anyway,
let's
keep in mind, Humble Games, Humble Bundle, not this related, not the same thing. Yeah.
The last thing that I had marked here, which was mostly just because I saw a post talking about the back and forth on it. Our good friend Jeff Keighley.
Friend of the show.
Can I just be frenemies with him or something? I don't know if I want to go full friend.
Guy of the show.
Yeah. I mean, guest host. He has been like hosting a couple of checkpoints theoretically.
Fellow Canadian.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't deny that he's Canadian.
See, that works. Yeah.
Anyway, so Jeff Keighley, for whatever reason, has been very gung ho on the PlayStation Pro, PlayStation 5 Pro.
Yeah. Oh, really? Because I don't think anyone else has been.
Well, this is the problem, is that the less other people are gung ho for it, the more him being excited about it starts looking suspicious.
Feels weird, right? Feels weird out of nowhere, but yeah.
And so, for instance, he.
So has he been doing like
he posted
ad work?
This like, here's inflation adjusted prices for the mainline PlayStation consoles. So PS1,
right.
PS2, PS3, PS4, PS4 Pro, PS5, and then PS5 Pro. Trying to make the argument, I guess, that it's not that much. It's sort of in line.
The PS5 Pro is like $700 US.
Yeah.
As a diskless system, by the way, and it doesn't come. You have to buy the stand individually because
Yeah.
they didn't throw that in. For us, it's like $1,000 Canadian,
Yeah.
I think, or over that.
Yeah. Not cool.
It's so much money.
So, but what's great about this thing, so this post, and it's got one of these, the little Twitter context things here.
Community notes.
So, one, the PS5 Pro does not have a disk drive.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another $80 if you want a disk drive. Two, this doesn't even make him look that good. The
No.
only system that was more expensive than it at launch was the PS3.
Yeah.
I
Which
remember
is a
that
system
going
that
over well.
Yeah, the PS3, a system that was famous for being incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was also the system that was. Who was it who said if people really wanted it, they would get a second job?
I don't know.
Because that was a.
Was it the CEO? Like,
Maybe I know
don't
there
know.
was somebody who was just like, you'll really want a PS3, and you'll want it so hard you'll go get a second job for it.
it's
or
the
something.
PS3, Michael. How much could it cost? $1,000. So the funny thing about that too, though, is like, if you look at things like looking at the PS2 and the PS4 on either side of the PS3, and seeing what their rationalized cost, like the normalized cost, the adjusted for inflation cost, right? That it is like $550, and I'm like, so the justification that something that is $700 is you should feel okay about that because the adjusted costs of the PS2 and the PS4 being $550. I'm like, that's $150 difference. That's almost a game in Canada. That's a lot of money. Like, that's extra controller and games or whatever else. And it is really kind of like, it is bad feels no matter what. Why? His job is spokesman. Like, his job is to is he getting paid by Sony to? There's no indication that he's getting paid to do any of this by any, like, I don't get paid by Nintendo to do all the shit I do about Nintendo, and I think we've been
That's
pretty clear on
probably
that
for
for
the
a
best.
while, right? So, but it's like, is he in the tank for Sony because he's a massive Sony fanboy? Then fine. Then I completely understand why he's pushing like that. But I don't know if that's the thing of, well, it's still an amount of money you can pay for a thing. It's like, it sure is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even like angry that the PS5 Pro costs $700 US. I just don't understand why anyone would care to buy it because it doesn't seem like it's worth getting over a PS5.
Unless you're one of these people who are like, I have to play in high performance, high graphics mode all the time, or else
like,
I'm being robbed of a gameplay
their
experience.
their technical thing because they did that like 10-minute like, we're going to show off this thing and talk about all the technical stuff, and most of what they showed off was games that people have already played if they own a PS5 or are coming to PC, and they were like, the crowds will have more clear detail in the background.
I'm
like,
always looking at those.
And it's like, if you have to freeze,
people care about
if you have
that?
to like freeze and zoom in to show the difference, then maybe
And that's the
not
other
worth
thing.
it that much.
Yeah.
At least on the YouTube video that I was watching, trying to look back and forth between the two things, I'm like, I can tell there's some differences. Maybe I just don't care enough, but they don't look that different. It doesn't look worth it.
Also, I have terrible vision. So
Yeah, Beach already can't
I have
bother.
learned that if I can play Legend of Zelda, I can play Tears of the Kingdom on my 65-inch TV at a reasonable distance, and I can be playing it at like 1080p and just walking around doing stuff and being like, yep. Can't tell this is not 4K. I can't tell any of that. It's impossible for me to enjoy good things.
Yeah, Beach was like, Nintendo Wii had the highest resolution.
Yeah,
TV.
and then I ruined my eyes playing Nintendo Wii on my I had a 96-inch screen, and I would play Wii on my projector, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And 480p bumped up, like and it's just like this massive thing. I'm like, and I'm having a great time playing this thing. So I don't care that much about the absolute final clarity of shit, right?
But like that's the other thing. It's the PS5's been out for like 4 years.
Yeah.
I think the first 2 years kind of don't count because it was so hard for anyone to get one.
I mean, they all want us to believe that, right?
And well, but that just means like it's been 2 years.
It also means
And then the thing that I remember it for the most, even though it's not totally true anymore, is how no one really cared about buying the PS5 because the games that were going on the PS5 were still going out on the PS4.
yeah.
I mean, it's interesting too because
Like all of them.
And this came out. This has
Except
come
for,
out
like,
sort
Returnal.
of at the same time that Xbox has really started to pull back on the. Like, I don't even know if there will be another
Xbox console.
Like, they've really started to be like, you can play games on everything, and we're all big on that. And like, they like, I think they've dropped almost any exclusives that they were going to have.
Yeah.
I think PlayStation is the only one who's still got the exclusives. I mean, obviously Switch does as well.
Yeah,
But.
and they can now play Call of Duty. My feeling about the pandemic kind of gave the PS5 a bit of a gift in that for a 2-year block of time, the PS5 being damn near impossible to get because of constrictions in the market and whatnot. Everyone can look at the PS5 and be like, "Oh, but we know why it didn't do so well right off the bat because there weren't enough of them out there, and it was impossible to make enough of them to satisfy any sort of like even meager demand. Right? They weren't available, so we couldn't sell them, and so and making video games was all messed up for that period of time too. And it's like you have been given a gift to extend the life of your console by an extra 2 years, Sony. In effect, you can be like, we can let this sucker ride out for 9 years if we want to. So if you look at it like that, it does feel weird that two years after the real launch of the PS5, 2022 versus 2020, that you're like, we're dropping the Pro version right now. We're giving you the high powered version of the thing right now. And it's like, yeah, that does feel a little weird. You might have wanted to wait an extra year, maybe two. Sony must have a feeling that they're like, what we're trying to do is we're trying to not wait until we have a PS4 Pro issue of late in the game at the tail end of when the PS4 is a thing to be like, now we're going to release a Pro version. Like, no, let's get ahead of that now. Let's get the Pro version out because we can. And
the biggest difference between like the
that.
PS4 and the PS4 Pro in the regards to like PS5 and PS5 Pro is that at that time, I believe the PS4 Pro started letting you play your games in 4K, and people actually started having 4K TVs at that time.
Absolutely.
And there's like, you could see the difference, and there was a reason to do it. Whereas I still just look at these things and I'm like, so you can make the crowds bigger and better.
Yeah.
Who cares? You're going to spend more time making the background stuff even better, so your games are going to take 12 years now instead of 8? Like
the big thing that they've said is like, it's, a lot of PS5 games have performance mode and
it's like fidelity mode.
Fidelity mode.
Yeah,
it's got a better name for that. Anyway, performance. It's either like 30 frames a second, super pretty 4K or whatever.
Yeah.
Or 60 frames a second, slightly less pretty.
Yeah.
And they're saying we can do the 60 at the high, like we can get best of both on the
Pro. Yeah.
Now, the important thing, if you are looking to buy a new PlayStation, they do have these ones.
Yes.
Because it's PlayStation's 30th anniversary. They've just teased these special 30th edition PlayStation. To be fair, these are pretty awesome.
I do like the older PlayStation logo with the colors. Yes? You're what?
I don't find that exciting to look at though.
No.
Right. And I get why, because they're like, well, gray, because that was the original PS1. Sure. I understand that. But even then, it's like that gray is not really a reason to get excited about. If it was so important to Sony that they have this amazing looking thing that looks a certain way that makes everybody really pleased about, that, then why wouldn't why wouldn't they always make them gray? If that was like, this is the color that we believe in, that we want things to be, then why wouldn't they always be making them gray? They have that ability. They've been making them black for years upon years. And then the PS5 comes out and it's like bright white. And I'm like, and they're beautiful. They are like, the PS5 is a beautiful looking object. It really is.
I mean, but like, Nintendo.
Just changing it up all the goddamn time.
Right. But they also have made special edition Switches in the color scheme of Super Nintendos and
Switches? I don't know if they've done that.
they've done a Switch with like the purple buttons and like a gray.
No,
Haven't they done that?
No.
that was like 8BitDo or like
There
other
are people who do those
who've done
things
them,
on-
but
yeah.
that's not
Yeah.
Nintendo.
Yeah, they have done.
They've done that with the 3DS.
They've done GBAs and 3DSs and stuff, which have
Okay.
all leaned into that kind of thing. And I'm
So what I'm saying
Yeah.
is a company pulling out the aesthetics from the old thing
yes,
is totally very common, and
yes.
it doesn't indicate that the fact that they're not using that old aesthetic anymore doesn't mean that that was wrong
No.
or that they have a better one.
No.
I feel like Nintendo fanboy Beach trying to. It's not going to have the same nostalgia for PlayStation.
But it's just
color.
all gray, and I'm just like, there's no like splash of color on it anywhere, because there really wasn't any splash of color on the original PlayStation either, just the logo, and it's like, it's too
like,
bad.
Again,
that,
I like the older logo. I like the color in it. I think it's neat.
Yeah.
As somebody pointed out, the USB cable that
Yeah.
it comes with.
That's pretty.
That's a USB-C,
I like that.
but it's got like the big fat.
That's cute.
Yeah,
controller
that's
end
really
on it.
cool.
Yeah.
Those are cable ties they got on the other side.
Oh,
there.
I see. Right, that
That's a
makes
great
sense.
idea. Yeah,
That's-
I thought
that's
that
cool.
what that was to go around and kind of catch in there. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's like the opposite. It's like doing like a reverse proprietary connector.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's pretty cool.
So
Anyway,
people plug that into the bottom of their phones probably to charge with and stuff. That'll be fun.
anyway, thanks everybody for watching. That was all the news that
We were choosing to talk about this.
all the news that we are choosing to talk about. If you haven't seen this week's episode of ChillPoint, you should do that. Go check it out on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/LRRVG, video game channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, it's probably somewhere around this video in the recommended things or something. But anyway, thank you for supporting us on Patreon, buying merch, of which I think all of these things
We're all
are
wearing our
available.
merch today.
Yeah.
I think these are not only wearing merch, but wearing merch that is actually like available.
I
for
believe
purchase.
Some
they
of the
all
more
still are,
popular
yeah.
merch too. Even.
Yeah, there you go.
I like this shirt. I'm very much like.
I really like that
design
one
on this
too.
one.
Yeah. So, thank you everybody, and we will talk to all y'all later.